You've probably felt it before, the sense that something watches you when you're alone. Not a person, not an animal. Something quiet, patient, waiting for the moment you stop paying attention. I always thought that was just paranoia, an overworked mind playing tricks on itself. Until that night. A night that, even today, I don't know if it ever really ended. A night that might still be happening. My name is Daniel, and what I'm about to tell you is not fiction. It's not a campfire tale or an internet creepypasta. This happened. And I can only hope that you never experience anything remotely close to it, because some doors, once opened, never close again. It began after the death of my great-aunt Helena. I barely knew her, but legally, I was the last eligible relative to inherit her property. A house in the deep countryside of Minas Gerais, Brazil, so remote that the town didn't even appear on most maps. The lawyer explained that if I didn't claim it, the government would. All I had to do was visit, sign, and decide whether to sell or keep it. What no one mentioned was that nobody had lived in that house for over 50 years. Not even Helena. She owned it, but never returned. I arrived just before sunset. Thick gray clouds swallowed the sky, and the air smelled like ancient rain, like water that had soaked the earth for decades without drying. The gate was chained shut, but the key slid in smoothly as if the lock had been used recently. When I pushed the gate open, a cold wind swept past me, shivering through the overgrown grass, as if something slipped out the moment I walked in. The house was massive but looked like it was sinking into the earth. The windows were boarded shut from the inside, not to keep intruders out, but to keep something in. The main door groaned as if it hadn't opened in a lifetime. I stepped inside, lighting the space with a flashlight since the house had no electricity. The interior was all dark wood and stale air, but beneath the dust there was another scent, chemical, metallic, unpleasantly sweet. The living room furniture was covered by sheets, and every step sent dust swirling through the beam of light. The silence, though, that was the worst. No wind. No insects. No creaking. Just stillness, as if the world outside was holding its breath. In the hallway, every picture frame was turned against the wall. Not fallen, deliberately faced inward. I lifted one out of curiosity. It showed a family from another era, stiff and expressionless in old-fashioned clothes. But in the corner, barely noticeable, was a child smiling. I stared longer, and realized it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile someone wears when they know something no one else does. Something awful. My hands trembled as I turned the picture back. I shouldn't have touched it. I moved through the rooms. The first had a broken bed and empty wardrobe. The second had deep claw-like scratches carved into the wood, high up on the walls, too high to be from any animal. I was examining them when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Bare. Wooden floorboards bending under weight. I froze. My flashlight flickered. I wanted to call out, ask if someone was there, but my voice wouldn't come. I closed my eyes for a single second. When I opened them, the hallway was swallowed in blackness. The beam of the flashlight couldn't penetrate it. Then I felt it. Breathing. Right behind me. Slow, warm, human. I spun around, flashlight trembling. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Heart pounding, I headed toward the front door. I had seen enough. I would leave, return during daylight, bring someone with me. But when I reached the entrance, the door was closed. I had left it open. I was certain. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't turn. I shoved it hard. Nothing. It felt locked from the outside. Then the wood began to shake. Thump, thump, thump. Not like wind. Like someone, or something, was pressing gently, testing the structure as if deciding how to enter. The entire house went silent. That's when I heard the first voice. Right behind me. You came back. I turned instantly. Nothing. Just empty shadows stretching down the corridor. My pulse hammered in my ears. I needed another exit, window, back door, anything. I moved into the kitchen and reached for the rear door, but before I could turn the handle, something cold touched the back of my neck. Like fingers. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The voice came again, closer this time, whispering against my skin, like lips inches from my ear. You promised you wouldn't leave again. I stepped forward slowly. The cold hand withdrew. I burst through the door into the backyard, but outside, the night was wrong. No stars. No moon. No wind. Just a void. Like the house existed somewhere else entirely, disconnected from time and geography. In the distance, a faint lantern glowed between the trees. Beside it stood a tall figure. Thin. Motionless. Watching. I blinked. Now it was closer. Blinks don't move objects. They don't change distance. I held my gaze, refusing to blink again. Then my flashlight died completely. In the darkness, I heard footsteps sprinting toward me, fast, impossibly fast. When the light returned, the figure was gone. I rushed back inside, slamming the door behind me, only to realize the house had changed. The sheets no longer covered the furniture. The dust was gone. The walls were restored. And candles lit every corner. The house was alive, in another time. And people were inside. Men, women, dressed in old clothing. Standing. Sitting. Leaning against walls. Pale. Silent. Still. None of them blinked. None of them breathed. At the center of the room sat the child from the portrait. Smiling. Waiting. I stared, and the child spoke in a voice far too old, too deep, too many voices layered together. "You are late." My throat tightened. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. The child tilted its head slowly, bones cracking with the motion. "You left. But the night does not end until everyone returns." The candles dimmed. The walls warped. Faces in the room twisted into hollow-eyed expressions of hunger and longing. Their mouths slowly opened, not to speak but to inhale as if they fed on breath. I stepped back and every figure turned its head toward me at the exact same time. Bones popping. Necks snapping. Eyes wide and empty. The child rose from the chair without moving its feet, floating just above the ground. "Sit. Remember." The figures advanced in silence, footsteps perfectly synchronized, like puppets pulled by invisible strings. I tried to run, but the house stretched endlessly, corridors looping, rooms changing places, doors relocating. Every exit led me back to the same room. Back to the child. Back to the night. My memories twisted. Images I didn't recognize flooded my mind. Me as a child standing in that same living room surrounded by the same people. A ritual. Hands holding mine. Someone whispering, "You will return when the night calls." I fell to my knees. The child placed a hand on my face. It was ice cold. "Do you remember us now?" And in that moment, I did. The house was not haunted. The house was alive. And I had been part of it long before I understood what I was. Everyone who entered became part of its memory. Its hunger. Its night. I tried to scream, but no sound left my throat. One by one the figures closed in. Their mouths opened wider than humanly possible. Darkness poured out, not shadows but something alive, reaching for me, coiling around my lungs, my thoughts, my identity. The child whispered one final time. "No one leaves until the night is full." The candles blew out. Everything went silent. And I woke up. Not in a bed. Not outside. But sitting in a chair, in that same living room, the house back in ruins, daylight leaking through the boards. My phone was dead. My car was gone. The road outside no longer existed. Only forest. I walked for hours. Maybe days. And now I don't know if I ever truly left. Every night since, I hear footsteps behind me. Slow. Bare. Wooden floors that shouldn't be there. And sometimes I catch a glimpse of a small, smiling face reflected in windows and mirrors. If you ever receive a key to a house you didn't ask for, don't go. Because some places don't stay in one world. They reach across to find you. And if the night calls your name, run. Before you remember why it knows you. I wish I could tell you that leaving the house changed everything. That whatever happened there stayed behind, trapped in that rotting structure in the woods. But the truth is, the house wasn't just a place. It was a door. And once you walk through a door like that, you don't get to choose which side you're on. For weeks after I escaped, I tried to convince myself it had been a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by stress or lack of sleep. But nightmares don't leave physical marks. Nightmares don't follow you in silence. Nightmares don't breathe behind you when you're fully awake, standing under cold daylight. The first sign that something was wrong happened on the bus ride back to the city. I hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours, my clothes were ripped, my hands were shaking. When I finally forced myself to close my eyes just for a moment, I felt someone sit down in the seat beside me. But when I opened my eyes, the seat was empty. Still, the weight remained, indentations on the fabric as if something invisible sat there, staring straight ahead. Behind me, a child laughed. Not loud. Not playful. A breathy, knowing laugh. I kept my eyes forward until I reached town and checked into a cheap motel, figuring I'd rest before making calls. I hadn't told anyone where I was going, and I had no explanation that didn't sound insane. That night, I left the bathroom light on and tried to sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the room, slow steps circling the bed. The air grew cold, so cold my breath fogged in the air. I didn't move. Whatever it was stopped right next to the bed, inches from my face. I could feel it watching me. The silence stretched so long that I actually started to believe maybe nothing was there. Then a voice whispered, "You forgot to say goodbye." I bolted upright. The room was empty. The light in the bathroom flickered, then went out. I didn't sleep again. Over the next days, the boundaries between waking life and whatever followed me grew thinner. I'd see shapes and reflections that weren't there when I turned around. My shadow would stretch longer than my body, bending at angles that didn't match the light source. And the whispering, always just behind me, always just quiet enough that I couldn't make out the words. I told myself I was losing my mind. I tried therapy. I tried medication. I tried not talking about it at all. But the voices didn't stop. The dreams got worse. Every night I was back in the house, except not as myself. I stood among the others, moving when they moved, breathing when they breathed, seeing through their hollow eyes. And always, the child stood in front of me, whispering something I never fully remembered when I woke up. Until one night I did remember. The child traced its finger along my chest, marking a spot above my heart, and whispered, "We need one more." I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, clawing at my skin. When I lifted my shirt, there was a bruise exactly where the child had touched me. A perfect circle, dark and purple like a seal. And that morning I wasn't alone. Standing in the corner of my room, half hidden in the shadows, was one of the figures from the house. Pale, silent, eyes wide and unblinking. It didn't move when I looked at it. It didn't vanish. It just stood there, waiting. I packed my things and left without turning off the lights. I rented another room hours away in another city entirely. But when I walked in, the same figure was already there. Same corner. Same posture. Same empty eyes. I didn't understand. Were they following me? Or had they always been with me and I was just now seeing them? Eventually, I realized running wasn't the solution. The house wasn't chasing me. It was calling me back. Every sign, every whisper, every nightmare was pulling me towards something unfinished, something I had left behind. And deep down, I knew what it was. I hadn't left the house. I had been released. Temporarily. The night wasn't over. Not for me. Not until I brought someone else to take my place. That's what one more meant. The house wasn't full. I was never meant to escape. I was meant to deliver someone back to it. Now, every time I walk outside, I see people differently. Some pass me on the street and I hear the faintest whisper. Not them. Others look at me for a second too long, and I hear, yes, they could fit. I don't know how long I can resist. The bruise on my chest grows darker every day. The figures stand closer. The child appears not only in reflections now, but sometimes in daylight. Sometimes in crowds. Sometimes right behind my shoulder when I blink. And the worst part? I've started dreaming not as a prisoner of the house, but as part of it. As if I belong there. As if I always did. Sometimes, God help me, I wake up smiling. Not because I want to, but because something inside me does. Something that remembers. Something that's waiting. The house isn't a place. It's a hunger. And hunger spreads. If the night calls your name, pray it's not because of me. Because one night soon, I might finally choose someone. And when I do, I won't feel guilty. I'll feel relief. Because that will mean the night is full. And I can finally go home. I thought resisting would be enough. I thought as long as I stayed away from people, avoided conversations, pushed everyone out of my life, I could keep the house from feeding. I isolated myself, quit my job, stopped answering calls, stopped leaving messages. I moved into a small apartment with no windows and kept the lights on at all hours. But the shadows didn't need darkness. They just needed time. The bruise on my chest had darkened to a color I had never seen on human skin. Black with undertones of deep red, like dried blood viewed through smoke. It pulsed sometimes, not in rhythm with my heartbeat, but in rhythm with something else. Something slower, ancient, like a heartbeat coming from beneath the earth. And I wasn't alone anymore. The figures from the house didn't just stand in corners. They started moving when I wasn't looking. I'd turn away, hear a footstep, turn back, and they'd be inches closer. Their faces never changed, hollow eyes, mouths slightly parted as if waiting to inhale. One night, I woke to one of them sitting on my chest, staring into my face as if studying me. Cold air flooded my lungs, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. When I finally gasped awake, it vanished, leaving fingerprints on my skin where its hands had pressed down. I tried to scream. No sound came out. I wasn't living anymore. I was waiting. Waiting for the house to call me back. The turning point happened when someone finally came looking for me. Her name was Aline. We had dated years ago, nothing serious, but she always cared more about me than I deserved. She showed up at my apartment door after months without contact, knocking softly at first, then calling my name. I froze on the other side of the door, barely breathing. I could hear whispers behind me. The figures gathering. Not angry. Not restless. Hungry. Their heads tilted toward the door like hounds scenting prey. I pressed my back against the wall, shaking. If I opened that door, even to say goodbye, even for a second, I knew what would happen. I stayed silent. But she didn't leave. Her voice cracked. Daniel, please. I just want to know you're okay. Something inside me shifted. A warmth. A memory. A life that didn't belong to the night. Her presence cut through the static in my mind like a blade. For a moment, the figure stepped back. I almost opened the door. Almost. Then I felt a small hand slide into mine. Ice cold. Tiny fingers. The child. Standing beside me. I hadn't heard it approach. It just appeared like it had always been there. It leaned close, its voice no longer whispering, but speaking with clarity, like a truth I had always known. She will take your place. My blood froze. The figures took a collective step toward the door. The room darkened, walls bending like the structure was breathing. I stared at the doorknob, hands shaking, torn between instinct and inevitability. Aline knocked one last time. I'm here if you need me. Please just don't disappear again. Her footsteps faded down the hallway. The figures retreated back into the shadows one by one. The child looked up at me. You hesitated. I clenched my fists, tears burning my eyes. I don't want this. I'm not doing this. I'm not choosing anyone. The child's expression didn't change. You will. Days passed. Or maybe weeks. Time didn't feel linear anymore. Sometimes I'd wake up in places I didn't remember walking to, forests, alleys, abandoned lots, always at night, always alone, always with the sound of footsteps fading behind me. I realized something horrifying. I wasn't sleepwalking. I was being led, drawn, prepared. Every dream brought me back to the ritual room, surrounded by the endless congregation of pale watchers. Every time I returned, more faces appeared, faces I recognized from real life. People I'd passed on the street. People I had seen once in a store. Their eyes were empty now. They belonged to the house. The house wasn't waiting for me to choose. It was choosing for me. And one morning, I woke up not in my apartment, not in a motel, but in a forest clearing. The air smelled exactly like that first night. Wet earth. Old wood. Rotting leaves. I stood up slowly and there it was. The house. Except this time it wasn't decayed. It was whole. Alive. Lit from within, warm candlelight glowing through windows that, moments earlier, were boarded shut. The door was slightly open as if expecting me. My chest burned. The bruise glowed like embers beneath my skin. I tried to run. My legs didn't move. Not because I was frozen by fear, but because something inside me didn't want to leave. The child appeared in the doorway, smiling with that same ancient expression. The figures stood behind it, their hollow eyes fixed on me. It's time. I stepped forward. Not because I was forced, but because it felt like going home. Every step brought a wave of relief, like sinking into warm water after drowning in cold. Inside, the house pulsed with life. The walls breathed. Voices layered over one another like prayers, echoes of everyone who had ever entered. The congregation closed in around me. The child placed its hand over the bruise on my chest. For the first time, I understood what it meant. I wasn't marked to bring someone back. I was marked to return because I had already belonged. I exhaled, and darkness spilled out of my lungs like smoke. My body fell backward. But I didn't fall. I rose. Weightless, many-eyed, endless. The congregation bowed. The child smiled, not as a child but as something older, revealed through a veil that finally dropped. And I realized, I hadn't been chosen to feed the house. I had been chosen to become it. The night didn't call me back. I was the night returning to itself. And now, I am no longer afraid of doors. I am the one who knocks. I am the one who waits in corners. I am the breath on your neck when you think you're alone. And if you're hearing this, if the words are reaching you, it means you're close. It means you heard the night speaking through me. It means you're already marked. When the night calls your name, don't run. I want to meet you. I had never escaped. I had only been released to ripen. The house spoke through every voice at once. The night is full. The motel walls groaned as wind pressed against the rotted wood, like the building itself was breathing. Ethan remained on the floor a long time, staring at the journal, his hands trembling, not just from fear but from recognition he couldn't explain. That burning sensation in his chest faded, leaving only a cold emptiness beneath his ribs. He stood slowly, limping toward the motel window. Outside, the highway was abandoned, the lone street lamp flickering as if struggling to exist. His mother and the masked figures hadn't followed inside, not yet. They lingered at the tree-line like shadows waiting for a command. He whispered to himself, "Why me? Why now?" But the answer came from behind him. A voice, soft, trembling, human. "Because you're not the only one." Ethan spun around, startled. A young woman, maybe mid-20s, emerged from behind the front desk, holding a broken mop handle like a weapon. Her face was streaked with dirt, hair tangled, eyes full of panic. She had been hiding. He raised his hands. "I'm not one of them." She studied him carefully. "You came from the woods." "Nobody leaves the woods." "I escaped." She scoffed. "No one escapes Black Pines. If you're here, it's because they let you leave." He swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Her fear wasn't irrational, it was experience. "What's your name?" he asked. "Marla," she whispered. "I've been running since last night. They killed the others. Or, took them." "Others?" "There were 4 of us. Hikers. We camped near the ridge because it was supposed to be a protected research area. But there were no animals. No insects. No sound. Just them watching from the trees." Her voice cracked. "And then one of us disappeared without a scream. We found his boots standing upright. Just the boots. Like something peeled him right out of them." Ethan felt the room grow colder. Marla continued. "I saw you in the woods. You didn't look terrified. You looked pulled." She stepped closer. "Who are you?" Ethan opened his mouth, but the question hollowed him. He wasn't sure anymore. Pieces of childhood memories began crawling back. Bonfires, symbols carved into wood, whispers in languages he never recalled learning. Before he could answer, the motel lights flickered violently. Both froze. Outside, movement surged in the tree-line, dozens of silhouettes now, not just the cult from before. Tall, hunched figures, their bodies twitching unnaturally as if joints bent the wrong way. Some wore masks. Some didn't. Some didn't have faces at all. Marla backed away, voice shaking. "They're not supposed to cross the road. They never leave the woods." Ethan looked again, this time realizing something horrifying. They weren't approaching the motel. They were searching the forest, scanning it like hounds looking for something, or someone. Marla grabbed Ethan by the arm. "You need to move. Now." They slipped out the back door into the overgrown lot. The sky above was moonless, unnaturally dark. It felt like they were walking beneath something massive and unseen. Ethan whispered, "We need to get to the highway. Find a town. Police." "No police will come near Black Pines," Marla hissed. "This place is off maps. Even satellites blur out the woods." He stopped. "How do you know that?" She hesitated. "Because I've been here before, when I was a kid." Ethan froze. His pulse hammered. She wasn't just a random survivor. She was like him. Before he could speak, headlights appeared in the distance. An old pickup truck racing toward them, engine screaming like metal tearing apart. The truck swerved violently, then screeched to a stop inches from their feet. A rugged man leaned out the window, breathless, shotgun across his lap. "Get in if you want to live. They're coming." Marla hesitated. Ethan stared, voice low. "Who are you?" The man's eyes were bloodshot, desperate. "Someone who's been hunting them longer than you've been alive." The trees behind them began to move, not swaying in the wind but pushing forward, like something massive walked among them. The man yelled again. "Get in." Ethan and Marla exchanged one look, shared fear and shared fate, then climbed in. The truck sped off so fast gravel exploded behind them. But Ethan couldn't stop staring at the tree-line as it shrank in the distance. Because for the first time, something stared back with glowing red human eyes. And it smiled. Not with hunger, but with recognition. As if the forest was whispering, "You can run, Ethan. But this time we're not chasing you. You're coming home on your own." The truck roared down the cracked highway, its headlights slicing through the night like a blade. Ethan sat pressed against the passenger door, fingers gripping the cold handle, while Marla kept low, watching the tree-line blur past as if expecting hands to reach out of the darkness and pull her back. The driver didn't speak at first. His jaw was locked tight, knuckles white around the steering wheel, eyes fixed forward with a paranoia that came from years, not days, of running. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "You said you've been hunting them." The man exhaled sharply through his nose. "Hunting, tracking, exposing, call it what you want. But they're not just some cult." He paused. "They're the remnants of something much older." Marla leaned forward between the seats. "Older than what?" Older than this town. Older than the forest. Older than the maps that pretend nothing is out here. He glanced at Ethan through the mirror. Older than you. The words lingered heavy. Ethan frowned. You know who I am, don't you? The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned sharply onto a dirt road hidden beneath overgrown branches. Bushes scraped the sides of the truck like claws. After a mile of darkness, the trees opened into a clearing filled with rusted hunting traps, barricades, motion sensors, old generator lights, and weapons mounted on workbenches. A survivalist outpost. Marla whispered, You live out here? Not by choice, he said, shutting off the engine. Someone has to keep an eye on the woods. He motioned for them to follow. Inside a makeshift cabin lit by dim lanterns, walls were covered with pinned photos, string connecting locations, classified military documents, missing person reports dating back decades. But the most disturbing part wasn't the victims, it was the repeating symbols drawn beside each case. The same symbols from the journal. The same ones Ethan saw glowing beneath his skin. Marla ran her fingers across a faded photograph. It showed a group of children standing in a circle in the woods, hands bound with rope, eyes blacked out, faces pale. A bonfire burned behind them. One of the children, even with the blurred face, looked exactly like Ethan at age 7. He felt a sharp pain behind his eyes, memories slamming into him like a blow. Children chanting. Hands gripping his shoulders. A voice whispering you were chosen first. He staggered and grabbed the table to keep upright. Marla reached for him. Ethan? He steadied himself, breath shaking. The man watched him carefully. You're remembering, aren't you? Ethan nodded slowly. I was there. I don't know how, but I remember the fire. The man approached, lowering his voice. You weren't just part of the rite. You were the purpose of it. Ethan's heart dropped. Why me? The man pulled a yellowed document from a metal lockbox and slid it across the table. Because you're not the first to escape. You're the first one they want back. Ethan unfolded the paper with trembling hands. It wasn't a ritual sheet. It was a birth certificate. His birth certificate. But the parents' names weren't the ones he remembered. Instead, the paper listed 2 names crossed out in red ink, and beneath them, handwritten in faded black pen. Property of Black Pines Collective, Vessel 03. Ethan dropped the paper as if it burned. Marla stepped back horrified. What does that mean? Vessel for what? Before the man could answer, every lantern in the cabin flickered. Then went out. The forest outside went silent. Not natural silence, suffocating silence. Like sound itself was afraid. The man cursed under his breath and chambered his shotgun. They found us. A distant howl erupted, not an animal, not human. Something layered, like multiple voices crying out from the same throat. Branches cracked. Leaves rustled. Marla whispered, voice cracking. They're surrounding us again. Ethan felt the pressure in his chest return, stronger. His skin burned with the same symbols carved across the photos on the wall. Something inside him was waking up. He could feel movement outside, not with his ears but like vibrations under his bones. He could sense how many were there, where they stood, even how fast they were closing in. The man aimed toward a boarded window. They don't want us dead, Ethan whispered, trembling. They want me. The man looked back, eyes full of grim resolve. I know. That's why we can't let them take you alive. The cabin wall exploded inward, wood splintering as something massive slammed through it. A tall figure stepped inside, mask cracked, veins crawling under its skin, eyes pit black. Marla screamed. Ethan froze. The creature leaned close, and spoke in a soft human voice. Ethan. It's time. The words didn't echo through the cabin. They sank into Ethan's mind like a memory he had spent years trying to drown. The figure stood in the breach of shattered wood and splintered beams, its presence bending the darkness around it. The bone mask was cracked down the center, revealing a sliver of pale skin beneath, skin that looked disturbingly familiar, like it shared his blood. The man with the shotgun steadied his aim, sweat dripping down his temple. You step closer and I blow your spine out through your teeth, he growled. The figure didn't flinch. Its head tilted slowly as if curious, then its gaze shifted past the gun, directly to Ethan. A whisper escaped from behind the mask, layered with dozens of overlapping voices. You were never meant to leave the circle. Ethan stumbled backward, pressing against the cabin wall. His vision blurred at the edges, shapes distorted, like the world itself was breathing. Marla grabbed his wrist. Don't listen to it. Don't let it inside your head. But the whisper spread, curling through the room like smoke, seeping into the floorboards, shaking dust from the rafters. "We called you first. We marked you first. You are our bridge." The shotgun roared. A blast of fire and smoke lit the cabin, tearing half the mask away and sending the figure staggering back into the night. Dark fluid, not blood, splattered across the floor, writhing like it was alive. The man pumped another shell. "Move. We need to get out of here before more come." They rushed toward a side door leading into another section of the cabin, a workshop lined with old radio equipment, maps of subterranean tunnels, and jars filled with soil samples labeled by coordinates. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, but something in his chest pulsed, heating his ribs from the inside. His vision flickered again, brief flashes. A circle of masked people chanting in a dead field. His younger self standing in the center, head lowered, hands pressing into his chest. A voice calling him not by name but by title. "Vessel." He gripped the counter, nearly collapsing. Marla noticed. "Ethan, hey, stay with me. What's happening to you?" "I don't know," he gasped. "It feels like they're waking something up." The man slammed metal shutters over the windows. "That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're not after you because you escaped. They're after you because you're the only one who can finish what they started." Ethan's voice cracked. "What did they start?" The man paused, eyes dark. "A summoning that failed 20 years ago." Marla froze. "Summoning what?" He didn't answer immediately. He walked to a locked metal cabinet, rummaged through stacks of photographs, then pulled out a single Polaroid and pressed it into Ethan's hands. The edges were burnt. The image blurry, discolored. A group of masked figures stood around a stone altar. On it lay a young boy, Ethan, eyes open, staring upward, chest carved with symbols. Marla covered her mouth, horrified. Ethan felt his pulse thunder. The man spoke through clenched teeth. "You weren't meant to survive that night. Something interfered. The ritual broke. They scattered. They've been rebuilding ever since." "And what was I supposed to become?" Ethan whispered. The man's jaw tightened. "Not a leader. Not a sacrifice." He met Ethan's eyes. A doorway. Before Ethan could respond, a deep rumble rolled through the earth beneath their feet, like something massive shifted underground. Tools rattled on the shelves. A lantern swung wildly, throwing manic shadows across the walls. Marla grabbed his arm again. "We need to go. Now." The man nodded. "There's an old drainage tunnel behind the north fence. We use it if the cabin falls." He loaded the last shells into the shotgun. "We move fast. They'll try to." A deafening crack split the cabin in half. A tree, thick as a vehicle, was thrown through the roof like a spear, its roots dripping with mud and fragments of bone. The ceiling collapsed, dust choking the air. Something enormous moved outside, its footsteps wet and heavy, like flesh dragging across soil. Marla screamed, shoving Ethan toward the back exit. The man stayed behind, aiming into the collapsing front half of the cabin. "I'll hold them off." Ethan spun back. "We're not leaving without you." "Yes, you are," the man barked. "You survive or all of this was for nothing." He pushed Ethan hard, sending him stumbling through the broken hallway. Marla pulled him into the dark, breath ragged. Behind them, a roar split the night, followed by the thunder of bodies crashing through wood. The last thing Ethan heard before the cabin was swallowed by chaos was the man screaming as dozens of voices sang over his agony, drowning him in ritual chants. Not in rage, but in celebration. Marla and Ethan ran until their lungs burned, bursting through the fence and tumbling into the ravine below. The world spun. Dirt filled Ethan's mouth. His ears rang like metal scraping bone. Marla crawled to him, shaking. "We're not safe. They're not stopping." Ethan lifted his head. Above them, on the ridge, dozens of silhouettes lined the treeline, motionless, watching as though waiting for a signal. And then, far above, the moon disappeared. Not behind clouds, but as if swallowed whole. The forest plunged into absolute black. The air vibrated with low, harmonic chanting. Ethan whispered, voice barely a breath. "They're not hunting us anymore." Marla trembled. "What do you mean?" Ethan stared into the darkness. "They're calling something." The ground below them trembled again. Not from above. From beneath. Something ancient, moving, awakening. And deep inside Ethan's bones, something answered back. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to wake myself up, but the world around me remained unchanged. The air smelled of rusted metal and burned sugar, as if the park had been abandoned for decades yet still forced to exist. I tried walking toward the exit again. Same gate, same flickering bulbs, same neon sign spelling out, "Welcome back." The letters pulsed now as if reacting to my thoughts. I yelled, screamed, cursed, kicked the metal bars until my foot throbbed, but all my voice did was echo back at me, warped as if spoken by someone else. Someone behind me. I turned slowly. The clown wasn't standing there anymore. But his laughter drifted through the empty air, soft at first, then layered, like multiple voices speaking through one throat. I backed away until my spine hit the cold metal of the gate. My breathing was fast, broken. I knew I had to move, but the park no longer felt like a place I could navigate. It felt alive, shifting beneath my feet. The Ferris wheel, silent minutes ago, now spun slowly. Only there were no seats. Just dangling chains. And silhouettes swayed from them, limp, motionless, like bodies suspended by their arms. I didn't want to see their faces, but the wheel kept turning, presenting them to me one by one. A teenage girl in a rain-soaked hoodie. A man in a security uniform. A woman in torn carnival employee attire. Their eyes stared ahead, wide open, yet hollow, like something had drained every thought from them. Then the wheel stopped, and one of the bodies twitched. Her head jerked toward me, bones cracking, eyeballs shifting unnaturally in their sockets. When her mouth opened, the voice that came out wasn't hers, it was the clown's, layered with dozens of others. You were chosen. I ran. Not because I thought I could escape, but because instinct took control. My legs carried me past broken stalls, collapsed tents, and a row of carnival games where all the prizes were missing their faces. Stuffed animals stitched shut, eyes carved out, some replaced with human teeth. Something moved inside the shooting gallery booth. I froze. It was a girl, maybe 12, sitting on a stool, hugging her knees. Pale, soaked, shaking. Help, please, she whispered, voice brittle. I stepped closer, slowly, hands raised. I'm not here to hurt you. Are you trapped too? She didn't look up. She just whispered. They're watching. Who? Finally, she lifted her head. Her eyes were pure black, pupils so wide they swallowed every trace of color. The ones who never left. A shadow passed behind her. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. Then she smiled, wide, too wide, and her voice changed. You shouldn't have come alone. She lunged, but before she could reach me, a deafening siren echoed across the park, like an emergency alarm from beneath the ground. The girl froze mid-motion, then slowly backed into the darkness, vanishing like she'd never been there. The rides all stopped at once. A whisper crawled across the park, spoken by hundreds of overlapping mouths. Midnight is the harvest. The sky shifted. What once looked like clouds now appeared to be silhouettes, faces pressing from the inside of the sky itself, as though the heavens were only a thin membrane over something deeper, hungrier, waiting. I could barely breathe. Lights flickered on across the park, not neon, not bulbs, but candles. Thousands of them, lined along pathways leading toward the carousel at the center. Except the carousel was no longer wooden horses. It was filled with human figures, frozen mid-scream, fused into the poles like bone-grown sculptures. Their flesh stretched into the machinery, blood dripping in slow, rhythmic pulses to keep the ride moving. Every turn of the carousel made them scream softly. I couldn't look away. Then a man stepped out from behind the ride. Tall, wearing an old-fashioned ringmaster coat, face pale like wax, eyes pitch black, not demonic but empty, like nothingness given form. I've waited a long time for someone to see us, he said softly. Someone who remembers. I don't know you, I whispered. He shook his head. You don't remember yet. But you came here before. You made a promise. I denied it, but something inside me trembled. A memory half erased. Why me? What do you want? He stepped closer, voice calm, almost sad. To take your place. We all had to. Someone must stay to keep the gate closed. He pointed at the gate behind me. It wasn't metal anymore. It was a door made of bone, ribs forming an arch, skulls stacked like bricks. And where the lock once was, a heart still beating, nailed into the frame. You came here to escape your life, he continued. You just didn't expect reality to let you go. My throat dried. He extended his hand. Let it take you. We'll finally be freed. I stepped back. No. I'm not dying here. His expression changed, not anger, disappointment. Then you will run, he whispered, just like last time. The world shook. The bodies on the carousel screamed in unison. The Ferris wheel chains snapped loose. The ground cracked open, releasing smoke that smelled like funeral homes and wet earth. And the clown's voice thundered across the park. Harvest begins. I turned and ran. I didn't know where I was running, only that the screams behind me multiplied until they no longer sounded human. Shadows crawled along the ground like spilled ink, rising into thin, distorted figures whose limbs bent wrong, jointed backward, moving faster than any living thing should. The ringmaster's voice followed me like a whisper slipping through my skull. A guardian must stay, and you already chose. I ignored him, sprinting across rotting planks, past stalls collapsing under the weight of unseen forces. Lights burst overhead, sparks raining down like burning snow. The whole park trembled as if something enormous was trying to push its way up from beneath the soil. I reached the House of Mirrors again, not because I wanted to, but because every path led back to it. The entrance curtains blew open as if inhaling. Inside, the lights flickered awake one by one, illuminating endless reflections, some matching my movements, others lagging behind, staring with expressions of pain I didn't recognize. I stepped closer. One reflection wasn't me. He looked identical, same face, same clothes, but his eyes were bloodshot, frantic, and full of exhaustion, as though he'd been trapped here far longer than I had. He pressed his palm to the glass. I stepped forward until my hand hovered over his. His voice echoed through the mirror like speaking underwater. You forgot. I didn't. I froze. My voice trembled. Forgot what? He swallowed hard, eyes shaking. We came here together. But only one of us left. My heart dropped. No. That's not possible. He nodded slowly, tears spilling down his cheeks. I stayed. You lived your life. Now it's your turn. The realization hit me like a crashing wave. Memories resurfacing in broken flashes. The storm. The night we sneaked into the abandoned park. The dare to step inside the funhouse. The chair I sat in. The voice that said only one soul may return. A promise. A sacrifice. I stumbled back, choking on my own breath. I didn't know. I didn't remember. But the park did, he whispered. It always remembers. The mirrors around me shattered outward, glass twisting into jagged wings that rose like predators. The floor split beneath my feet, revealing black water swirling with pale faces, screaming, reaching. The clown emerged from the darkness behind my reflection, placing its hands on his shoulders like a puppeteer. Its voice slithered across the room. Everyone gets one escape. He looked at me one last time. Please, don't make me stay here alone again. Something inside me shattered, guilt, fear, responsibility, but before I could speak, the ringmaster stepped into the doorway behind me, shadow stretching longer than physics should allow. You may choose, he said calmly. Stay and seal the gate, or run and break it open forever. The ground shook violently. Screams rose from beneath the park, thousands of them, begging, angry, starving. The sky pulsed red like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes. My voice was barely a whisper. If I stay, do they go free? The ringmaster nodded once. All except one. The guardian remains. I exhaled, tears burning my face. I'll stay. My reflection's expression collapsed into shock, then relief so deep it broke me. The clown let go. The mirror world shadows recoiled. The park went quiet as if exhaling centuries of trapped breath. The ringmaster placed his hand on my chest. Pull. Final. The world inverted, colors draining, muscles freezing. I felt my body turn heavy, rooted to the ground. My vision blurred until I no longer saw through my own eyes, but through every reflective surface in the park. I wasn't flesh anymore. I was the watcher. The guardian. Bound to the gate. The ringmaster stepped back, his face finally soft, almost human. Rest. Your watch begins. My last glimpse of the outside world was my reflection, now flesh again, standing where I once stood. He breathed real air. He looked up at the sky as clouds parted and morning light broke through. He whispered to himself, I'm free. Then he walked toward the exit, and this time the gates opened. But as he crossed the threshold, he hesitated, just once, turning back to look into the park, like he felt something pulling at him from behind the veil. He couldn't see me, but I could see him. Forever. The gates closed. The lights shut off. The carnival slept. And from somewhere deep inside the earth, I heard the first whisper of the next cycle. Welcome back.